Right. Well, 30 years after the events of June 12, 1993, how far has democracy in Nigeria come? We're joined now by Idayat Hassan, who is Director of the Center for Democracy and Development. Idayat, so good to have you on News Night tonight.
Thank you for coming on board.
Thank you very much for having me.
You heard Chief Ayadibanjo there, and he's always been very passionate about democracy and, of course, through federalism. I mean, I followed closely the activities of NADECO in those days. Now, 30 years on, we're still battling with certain issues that brought us into June 12 in the first place. And sometimes we wonder what this paints about us to the international community. How does the story of June 12 present Nigeria to the Committee of Nations?
I think really for me, it's been an interesting 30 years. And it's been an interesting 24 years as well for us. And irrespective of the challenges, which I'll come to, there are lots of positives to actually highlight. We are having our longest stretch of democracy, 24 years, 7 consecutive elections, the longest seen in all of Nigeria's 4 republics that I love to say it. When you look at the last elections, irrespective of how fractious it has also become, it has moved us from a duopoly to actually a multi-party democracy, where you have tomorrow 8 political parties in the National Assembly as against the duopoly of APC and PDP. And collectively, you have the 6 smaller parties constituting like 20% of the total seats. And at the House of Representatives, you even have the majority being the other parties itself. We have seen youth and how important they have become in this whole contest. Even if the NSAS itself has changed the face of politics such that today you can no longer play with the youth constituency. Politics can never be played the way it was in previous years after the last elections. You've seen the rise of civic activism itself. And as much as we were worried about these elections, we did not see any military coup d'etat. We did not see any annulment. And instead of even the actors going on the streets and it becoming a very fractious post-election violence like we witnessed in 2011 with over 700 killed, we are now seeing people use the courts as the last resort of the common man. I think for us, we should pride ourselves in that while we talk in terms of like, what is the essence of democracy? If it does not deliver food and security onto the table of the citizens. That is 30 years ago. The Hope 93 that Chief Abiola campaigned upon. Better life, so suffering. We are still suffering. So how do we deal with it now?
Very good question. I mean, the current president, President Bola Tinubu, his mantra was renewed hope. So he's bringing back the promise of MKO Abiola, and he did not fail to emphasize that point in his speech today. First off, your impressions really about his speech. I mean, Chief Adebanjo unfortunately did not listen. I'm sure you listened and paid rapt attention to everything he had to say, especially when he called for Nigerians to make more sacrifices, and he will ensure that the sacrifices will not be in vain, and he will reward Nigerians with all kinds of palliatives, transportation, fixing infrastructure, health, education, and all that. How comforting for you?
I think what stands out from his speech is the acknowledgement of the fact that the Nigerians are not getting the delivery of public goods and services, really. So you start checking the paragraphs. It's clear from paragraph 14 after the elections. We were talking about the fact that, listen, this democracy is not delivering development to the people. That acknowledgement, that singular acknowledgement alone, I think it's a big one for me. And again, going on to the specifics to start talking about those infrastructures, which are key and very important. To start talking about palliatives and better things that will actually come to the people, and while saying that we should bear with him on the removal of subsidy and where all these monies will be reinvested into. I think these are strong statements that maybe as Nigerians we've not been used to hearing. These are strong acknowledgements that we are not used to hearing from people that, listen, democracy is not working. My democracy means that I have food on my table. I can't go sell democracy as Center for Democracy and Development. The essence is for democracy to deliver development to the people. If every day I start preaching democracy to them and they don't get the development, they don't even trust myself that I'm preaching this democracy. So somebody acknowledging that, I think that it is a good one, but talk is cheap. What Nigerians are now looking up to is, how is this going to be actioned? Okay. That is where we are.
Now, your submission is quite remarkable. Now, let me take you back to the president's comment on the removal of fuel subsidy. The president was an active member of the National Democratic Coalition, NADECO, in those years. And people are now alluding to his body language these days since he became president. When I talk about his body language, his facial expression, his tone of voice, his mannerisms, like he feels the pains of Nigerians.
Which he expressly said.
He's demonstrating that he is connecting with the people. And then he says he feels our pains in the removal of the fuel subsidy. What are your expectations from the president?
I think that it feels good. It feels good that, one, we must acknowledge that it's quite statesmanly for a president of the country. If you ask us that, how do we feel in the Committee of Nations? People want to see, this is not what we expected, many Nigerians, even when they voted for him. But what they have seen in the last 2 weeks is kind of inspiring and beginning to give hope, but hope to be matched with action on one hand. I think in the removal of the fuel subsidy, it is what has been promised should be delivered. And the government will not only be talking about public service, we must also find out to bridge it in the private sector itself, so that all employers of laborers, even like ourselves at the CTT, we come up with what is the stopgap for people within this period, so that it's not public service only that is balanced, private sector is also balanced. And this money are indeed reinvested in such a way that it will benefit Nigerians. It will not come to be another look, and they will see that they have removed subsidy, which is affecting everybody, not one person, at least the middle class, not just the poor. Everybody is actually affected by this removal. So we want it to be properly reinvested to better our lives.
All right, there are a few other things that President Tinubu made very, very strong points on. The need to emphasize the rule of law and strong independent judiciary. He also went on to say, look, illegal orders that truncate or abridge our democracy will no longer be tolerated. First, on the one hand, is saying, look, this democracy has to be fought with everything we have. We can't take it, for granted. What do you make of what he says about the rule of law and strong independent judiciary?
I think maybe the president is listening to us, because one of the things on the table is actually curbing impunity, and it starts with the judiciary really there. The judiciary is the hope of the common man, and it's the last hope as well. So even when you look at the electoral process, everybody has run to the judiciary. The minute people start feeling that justice delayed is actually justice denied, or the justice will not be properly dispensed, they start losing trust in democracy. And this will entail a lot of judicial sector reform, but also ensuring that the executive, where he himself heads, implements the decision of the court. So there are two things. One is that, yes, we've seen a lot of challenges with the judicial sector itself, but in even instances where the judicial sector has done well, we have not seen implementation from the judiciary. And this is important because we say that there is separation of power, and democracy is about checks and balances and separation of powers. So he will also walk the talk and ensure that the executive arm implements all the decisions as it comes from the judiciary, whereas making sure that beyond harmonizing the age of retirement, beyond better package for the judiciary, corruption in the judiciary is reduced, and impunity in all levels and layers of government is actually addressed. And this also goes to the issue of fighting corruption. Right. So this time around, fighting corruption should not just focus on the sanctions approach, which is about arresting people, putting them through the court system. It's about blocking the leakages and a collective approach where every Nigerian will be brought on board into this fight against corruption.
Perhaps our last question to you as we wrap this up. When the president spoke about the independence of the judiciary and the legislature in his speech, and yet some are saying that he's showing interest, strong interest, vested interest perhaps, in the choice of the leadership of the National Assembly.
Of the 10th incoming
of the 10th National Assembly. Do you think that the president will be able to keep to his word on this?
I think the National Assembly, that's a political one. And it also stems from the fact that the APC is not a majority, at least at the level of the House of Representatives. And to get some of these things passed, some of these laudable laws passed, policies and support, there has to be interest in who emerges in the National Assembly. So that's on the political ground. But be that as it may, I also think that the legislators tomorrow should go forward and be the way citizens were that got them elected. Because the citizens, it was this one man, one vote. The fact that citizens, the sophistication of the citizen way, in representing party, in recognizing party symbols, in understanding that stomach infrastructure is not enough as a way that led to 8 parties in the House of Representatives, 7 parties in the Senate, and this multi-party National Assembly that we have today. They should actually be, they should live up to that and go do the right thing tomorrow.
Go do the right thing tomorrow. No better words said. Idayat Hassan, thank you very much. Center for Democracy and Development.
Thank you for coming tonight.
Thank you.